This is Luke Paulson, the Catholic Conservative, and welcome to the news of the week for March 7th, 2026. And if you enjoy these videos, do not forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe for more. Minnesota money cut off. Like any parent who finds that a child has been abusing the credit card, the Trump administration has temporarily halted Medicaid funding for Minnesota. This is after the rampant fraud that has resulted in dozens of arrests. All Governor Tim Walz had to do was investigate the fraud when the claims were brought forward. However, he was too busy putting tampon dispensers in the boys' bathrooms. With all of this going on, the Somalis who put the Leering centers in place are demanding compensation. Apparently, they have emotional pain from all of this. Giving Ritalin to children who are not autistic and sending money to Somali terrorist networks took an emotional toll on everyone involved. I know of a perfect place where they can be provided with all of the compensation that they deserve. They can go to prison, or they can go back to Somalia. I am honestly fine with either one, but I would prefer the latter. If they send tax dollars to a foreign nation, they must obviously want to be there. The same applies to Israel and Ukraine. Now moving on from those deep state operators to another, let us talk about the Clintons. Clinton exonerates Trump. The Clintons testified before Congress. They went for the usual playbook of denial, denial, denial. But then former President Bill Clinton said something that shocked no one, except the Democrats. He said that Donald Trump had no involvement in Jeffrey Epstein's criminal empire. We know that Donald Trump separated himself as soon as Epstein's crimes were made public, and even offered whatever information that he could to bring the man down. Meanwhile, Ghislaine Maxwell was at Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2010, 2 years after Epstein's initial conviction. And then Epstein was invited to a 2015 fundraiser for then-candidate Hillary Clinton. So we have Bill Clinton denying things that are known to be facts, and Donald Trump is exactly where we left off. If the Democrats take Bill Clinton at his word, they have to admit that President Trump is innocent. While her husband was forthcoming, Hillary Rodham Clinton was not. Clinton's life insurance. Hillary Clinton is a corrupt lawyer and was cruel to her Secret Service. Both of these facts are well documented. During her questioning before Congress, she decided to spin multiple lies. She not only perpetuated the Russia collusion hoax that she created, as you recall, but also defended Howard Lutnick. I spoke about him last week, but to reiterate, he conveniently was not present during the 9/11 attacks and made a lot of money afterward, while the Epstein files of that era are shockingly low. Also of note there was an Anthony Weiner file labeled life insurance. Recall that it was his scandal that actually brought Clinton's crimes to light back while she was Secretary of State. We also know that in the Epstein files there were references to jerky and pizza. Some are speculating that this was code for the underage girls who were trafficked. If true, Pizzagate may have had more truth than we were led to believe. It was this line of questioning that caused Clinton to leave. Psychopaths do not like the truth being exposed. Now, as Secretary of State, she had access to a lot of intelligence. Intelligence that the Trump administration is actually acting on. A strike on Iran. Even though President Trump reinstated the named Department of War, his responses are quick and measured. Unlike George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, and Barack Obama, President Trump does not set up permanent shop in a country to finance the military-industrial complex. The supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, is dead. His body was found amongst the rubble, while his soul burns in hell for all of eternity. However, Iran will never know peace until they fully and completely reject the demon known as Allah. Iran now knows that America is willing to use force to get peace. A force that Iran cannot match. Naturally, Iranians are already celebrating. Everything that is happening is on the head of the regime. They brought every consequence on themselves. A school was hit. The initial strikes in Iran were successful in taking out their leadership and navy. However, they have some missile launchers left, which are being used to attack Americans. Iran could have just come to the negotiation table, but their government chose death to America instead. Just like Palestinian terrorists, these people place missile launchers next to schools, playgrounds, and hospitals. As a general rule, the Israelis have been very restrained, and sometimes do not attack if blowing up the missile launcher would harm civilians. American tech is not showing the same tact. Our systems are designed to pick up where the missile came from, and then launch a retaliatory missile to those coordinates. In this case, the missile came from a launcher next to a girls' school. The blood is on the hands of the Iranian military. not America. Now let us move on from American strikes to strikes on American civilians. A strike on Americans. A speedboat registered in Florida was taken out by Cuba. The official story out of Cuba was that these individuals were trying to free someone from a Cuban prison. There's no word yet on whether President Trump will take action, but if he does, it will be measured. More than likely, he will use the levers of power with embargoes or use another method of implementing tariffs. But you might be saying, Luke, if Americans were in Cuban waters trying to free prisoners in Cuba, it is their right to defend their borders, just like we are defending our borders from the drug boats. You're right about that, but like most dictatorial regimes, Cuba cannot be trusted. Now, without a good transition, I take you inland to the state of Kansas. Kansas driver's licenses. A $500 fine and 6 months of suspension of privilege is not a sentence to be taken lightly. However, this is the punishment for falsifying records at the DMV. I am sure that this includes everything from birth date to men lying on legal documents by saying that they are women. Kansas is the most recent state to demand that a legal document be legally accurate. This is a form of identification. And if someone is willing to lie about this legal record, what else will he lie about? Also, this might be the only information that a police officer has access to when it comes to getting medical aid in the event of a crash. Something that liberals still do not understand is that there are biological differences between males and females. This includes everything from drugs to what the doctors need to look for. Then again, I would not expect people who failed 5th grade biology to understand what a legal document is. Now, moving on from this imaginary oppression, let us talk about what may be real oppression. Dr. Oz takes on New York. Dr. Mehmet Oz of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid has found something in New York that was not quite right. There was potentially over $100 billion in fraud in New York State alone. A liberal wasteland, and so nobody should be surprised. According to Dr. Oz, the problem comes in that the number of home healthcare workers is exploding. The evidence suggests that there are more people in this industry than would be expected. We saw the same pattern in Minnesota with autism cases. The state is reimbursed per beneficiary, thus encouraging fraud. Sometimes the care was never even provided. I am starting to think that if fraud were under control, some of the untouchable sections of the budget might be easier to manage. Now, speaking of healthcare, let us talk about one of the healthiest things: red meat. What is in our meat? Project Veritas broke a story that might be just as serious as many of the others. We know that certain groups, such as the World Economic Forum, want people to eat bugs to stop global warming. Global warming, something that will kill us all even if the models have never come to fruition and never will. Now, one great way to ensure that Americans do not eat beef is to raise the cost of said beef. They showed that there are 4 major companies that control the beef processing industry in our country. Now, I live near a privately owned processor who handles everything from deer to cattle, but not everyone does. These big 4 create a de facto monopoly which keeps prices artificially high. While on the surface they want people to eat more beef, I cannot rule out that they are working for the World Economic Forum in the long run. Now, while the World Economic Forum wants to play God, let us listen to the words of one of God's servants. Stop using AI at the pulpit. Pope Leo has told Catholic priests something that should be abundantly obvious. Do not use AI to write sermons or homilies. It is vital to rely on the Holy Spirit. Now, I use AI when I need to sort out large amounts of data before I write something, but I try to make it a policy to write it myself. This is because I want the Holy Spirit to speak through me, not a machine created by fallen men. After all, AI makes mistakes, and with a few exceptions is liberal and thus anti-Christian. This should not need to be spoken by Pope Leo, but this is the world that we are stuck in.
Maybe I'm just blowing smoke. Maybe I'm completely off my rocker, but that is just my opinion. And do not forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe for more. But before you go, on the left I have last week's video, but you may also enjoy the video on the right.